After the company party, the CEO pulled a single dad into her car. "Tonight, I'm yours." The emergency exit light flickered yellow. Everyone else was inside. Champagne, laughter, success. But in this cold hallway, the CEO was trying to remember how to breathe. Daniel Matthews wasn't supposed to see this. He was just a warehouse manager in a borrowed suit, counting minutes until he could get back to his daughter. But he heard it. That sharp, broken sound people make when they think no one's listening. Allison Carter should have sent him away. Instead, she whispered 5 words that changed everything. "Tonight, I'm yours." Not a proposition. A surrender. She didn't want to be the CEO anymore. Just someone who could stop pretending. And the man who understood? He drove a decade-old Honda with a car seat in the back, and somehow knew exactly what she meant. The grand ballroom of the Meridian Hotel held 300 people, dressed in their best approximations of success. Daniel stood near the back wall, hands deep in the pockets of a suit jacket that had fit better 5 years ago. The fabric pulled across his shoulders now, muscle built from loading trucks and lifting 40-pound boxes 8 hours a night. A different architecture than the lean frame he'd carried as a crisis counselor. He'd stopped recognizing himself in mirrors around the same time he'd stopped sleeping through the night. 3 years of that now. 3 years of becoming someone else. On stage, Allison Carter stood in charcoal gray that looked expensive even from this distance. Her hair pulled back so tight it had to hurt, posture military straight, hands gripping the podium edge. Daniel noticed the grip first. Knuckles blanched white, pressure points visible even under stage lights. Then the breathing, too controlled, measured like someone counting inhales to avoid hyperventilating. The smile calibrated somewhere between confidence and ice. He knew these signs the way other men knew baseball statistics or stock prices. Knew them in his bones, in the muscle memory of 10 years, sitting across from people whose carefully constructed facades were 30 seconds from complete collapse. Daniel had told himself he'd left that work behind. Told himself every morning while loading pallets that he was just a warehouse manager now, that reading people was a skill he'd mothballed along with his credentials and the office that still had his name on the door, probably. That he'd chosen simplicity, scan barcodes, drive forklifts, go home to Emily, repeat. But the skills didn't mothball. They sat right under his skin, waiting. "This year, we didn't just survive," Allison said, her voice carrying that particular frequency of authority that made people sit straighter. "We thrived, and that's because of every single person in this room." Applause rolled like thunder. Around Daniel, the warehouse crew clapped dutifully. He kept his hands in his pockets, watching Allison's left hand tighten on the podium, watching the micro-expression that flickered across her face. Not pride, not satisfaction, but something closer to desperation. She was drowning. Right there on stage, in front of 300 people, drowning in plain sight. And nobody else saw it. Daniel felt the old instinct kick in, the one that had made him good at his job, the one that had also destroyed him. The need to move toward pain instead of away from it, to sit in the wreckage with people and help them find their way out. He forced himself to look away, checked his phone instead. Text from Maria downstairs. Emily fell asleep during Moana. Again. Girl's got the sleeping schedule of a college student. Daniel smiled despite himself. Typed back, "Thanks. Be home soon. Don't let her sucker you into more cookies. Too late. We're both criminals now." He snapped a photo of the chandelier, glittering, absurd, exactly the kind of fancy Emily loved, and sent it to Maria with instructions to show his daughter in the morning. Proof that Daddy went to the party, wore the suit, did the thing she'd made him promise to do. "You good?" Marcus appeared at his elbow, beer in hand. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one where you're reading everybody in the room and thinking too much." Marcus took a pull from his bottle. Thought you left that therapist brain behind? I did. Uh-huh. Marcus followed Daniel's gaze toward the stage, where Allison was wrapping up with practiced efficiency. What do you see that I don't? Daniel shook his head. Nothing. Just tired. Babysitter still charging $20 an hour? 25 after midnight. Marcus whistled. Brutal. Why'd you even come? Emily wanted pictures of Daddy at a fancy party. Daniel pocketed his phone. Mission accomplished. I'm out. It's only 10:30. And I've got a 7-year-old who's going to be up at 6:30 demanding pancakes and explanations about why T-Rex had short arms. Daniel pushed off the wall. See you Monday! He made it 15 minutes navigating the crowd toward the exit. The noise pressed against his skull, too many voices layered over jazz band and clinking glasses, triggering the low-grade headache he'd learned to expect from overstimulation. Another gift from 3 years of hypervigilance, of sleeping light, of his nervous system deciding that relaxation was for people who hadn't watched their wife's casket lowered into frozen ground. The service hallway was cold and quiet. Daniel pulled off his tie, the blue one with dinosaurs that Emily had picked out, that Marcus had declared not formal event appropriate. But Daniel wore anyway because making his daughter happy mattered more than matching some dress code. The exit glowed red 30 feet ahead. Freedom. Home. The couch and whatever basketball game he could find. The familiar weight of being alone that didn't press quite as hard as being in rooms full of people. Then he heard it. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a sharp inhale that cut off wrong, followed by another, faster, the rhythm spiraling. The sound of someone losing the fight against their own nervous system. Daniel stopped. Every rational part of his brain said, keep walking. Not your circus, not your monkeys. You don't do this anymore. You can't do this anymore. You tried and it broke you, and you have a daughter who needs you intact, not shattered into pieces trying to save everyone who's drowning. But his feet turned anyway, carried him toward the sound, toward the figure pressed against the wall beneath the emergency exit light's sickly yellow glow. Allison Carter had her back to him, one hand braced against concrete, the other pressed to her sternum. Her shoulders rose and fell too fast, each breath shorter than the last, the classic spiral toward full panic attack. Daniel recognized the pattern immediately, 30 seconds from hyperventilating, maybe 60 from passing out if she didn't get it under control. He catalogued details automatically, the old training kicking in without permission. Mascara tracking down her face, lipstick bitten off, one hand trembling against the wall, the other clawing at her chest like she could reach in and restart her lungs manually. No physical injury, no immediate danger, just the brain lying to the body, telling it that death was imminent when really it was just Tuesday and she was just human and her armor had finally cracked. Daniel knew he should walk away. This woman signed his paychecks, controlled his livelihood, existed in a stratosphere so far above warehouse manager that they might as well be different species. Getting involved was stupid, dangerous, the kind of boundary violation that could cost him everything. But there was something about the way she stood there, so completely alone in her crisis, so certain no one would come, that reminded him of himself 3 years ago, sitting in his car in a grocery store parking lot at 2 a.m, unable to remember why he'd driven there, unable to make himself go inside, unable to do anything except exist in the terrible space between functional and broken. Someone had helped him that night. Some kid, couldn't have been more than 20, who'd knocked on his window and asked if he was okay, and then just sat there on the curb beside his car for 30 minutes while Daniel remembered how to breathe. Maybe this was just paying it forward. Maybe it was the therapist in him that refused to stay buried. Maybe it was just that he recognized pain when he saw it, and couldn't walk past it any more than he could walk past Emily crying. "Mom?" His voice came out softer than he'd intended. Deliberately gentle, the tone he used to use in the ER when approaching someone mid-crisis. "You okay?" Allison spun, and for half a second her face was completely exposed. Not the CEO, not the woman who'd just commanded a room of 300 people, just someone terrified and lost and drowning. Then the training kicked in for her, too. Spine straightened, hand dropped from her chest. Expression smoothed into something cold and dismissive, though her breathing still came too fast to sell the performance. "I'm fine." The words clipped, sharp-edged, designed to cut. "You should get back to the party." Daniel didn't move. He knew this dance. The reflexive push-away, the attempt to reclaim control through distance, the hope that if you could just make the witness leave, then maybe the breakdown didn't really happen. He'd done it himself enough times. He kept his hands loose at his sides, weight balanced, posture deliberately unthreatening. Everything about his body language said, "I'm not here to fix you or judge you or take anything from you. I'm just here." "With all due respect, Mom," he said quietly, "you're not fine." Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, that he wasn't running, wasn't obeying the command to leave. Her breath hitched, control slipping. "I don't—" She stopped, sucked in air that wouldn't go deep enough. I'm not here to fix anything." Daniel took one careful step closer, still maintaining distance. "But I know what a panic attack looks like, and white-knuckling through it alone in a hallway isn't going to help." Her face cracked a little more. "Who are you?" "Daniel Matthews, warehouse manager, night shift." "I don't remember you." "That's okay. There's 300 employees. Can't remember everyone." Allison stared at him, and he could see her trying to reconcile what was happening. That someone had seen her like this, that he wasn't leaving, that her authority wasn't working to create the distance she needed. "If you tell anyone—" Her voice shook now, the facade crumbling faster. "I won't," Daniel said simply. He pulled a small pack of tissues from his jacket pocket. He'd started carrying them after Emily's first week of first grade, when she'd come home with a runny nose, and he'd realized he was unprepared for the constant stream of minor disasters that defined parenting. Held them out to her. "Here." The gesture seemed to undo something in her. Allison took the tissues with shaking hands, looked at them like she wasn't quite sure what they were for. Then she pressed one against her eyes, and the tears came. Real now, not panic, just the release of whatever she'd been holding back. Daniel stood quiet, gave her space, resisted every instinct to fill the silence with reassurance or advice or the kind of therapeutic platitudes that had once been his stock in trade. Sometimes people didn't need words. Sometimes they just needed someone to stand witness while they fell apart. He'd learned that lesson the hard way. Learned it in the months after Sarah died, when everyone wanted to tell him it would get better. That time healed, that she was in a better place. And all he'd wanted was for someone to just sit with him in the terrible truth that his wife was gone, and it wasn't going to be okay for a very long time. And maybe never. After a long moment, Allison wiped her face, looked at the tissue, black with mascara, laughed, bitter, small. "This is so unprofessional." "We're not at work," Daniel said. "Right now you're just a person who's had a rough night. That's all." She met his eyes then, really looked at him for the first time. "Who are you, Daniel Matthews?" The question hit deeper than she probably meant it to. Who was he? The counselor who'd failed to save his own wife? The single dad barely holding it together? The warehouse manager hiding from his own life? The person he used to be? Or the person he'd become? Or something caught between? "Just someone who knows what it looks like when everything's perfect from the outside," he said finally. Allison studied his face, the lines around his eyes that came from 3 years of insufficient sleep, the grey threading his temples that hadn't been there before Sarah died, whatever she saw in his expression that made her shoulders drop another inch. "You weren't always a warehouse manager, were you?" Not a question. An observation. Daniel's hands tightened almost imperceptibly. Old reflex. "No." "What did you do before?" He could lie. Should lie. But there was something about the rawness of the moment, the honesty of her breakdown, that made dishonesty feel like betrayal. "Crisis counselor," he said quietly. "Emergency psychiatric services. 10 years. People having the worst nights of their lives, and I'd sit with them, talk them down, help them find a way through." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "That's why you—" She gestured vaguely at the space between them. "You're trained for this." Was trained. Different life now. "Why'd you stop?" The question everyone asked. The question he'd stopped having a good answer for, or maybe he'd never had a good answer, just different versions of the truth depending on how much pain he wanted to revisit. "Because I couldn't save my wife." The words came out flat, factual, the way he'd learned to say them without breaking. "I knew all the warning signs, all the interventions, all the things you're supposed to do. But I was at work when she left that night to pick up groceries. And there's no intervention for a drunk driver running a red light at Market Street doing 70 in a 45 zone." Allison's breath caught. "Daniel." "I tried to go back. Lasted 6 months. But every person I sat with, I saw her face. Every crisis felt like a test I'd already failed. Every time someone thanked me for helping them, I wanted to scream that I couldn't help the person who mattered most." He looked down at his hands, calloused now from loading trucks. Different hands than the ones that used to hold a pen and write intake notes. "So I quit. Took the first job I could find that didn't require me to save anyone. Warehouse manager, night shift, load trucks, scan barcodes, go home to my daughter. Simple. Safe. No one's life in my hands." "Except it's not simple," Allison said softly. "Because you still see it. You saw me in that hallway and you couldn't walk away." Daniel nodded slowly. "Old habits. Or maybe just who I am underneath everything else. I don't know anymore." "Is that all this is? A habit?" He looked at her then. Really looked. Makeup ruined, hair falling loose from its severe pins, expression raw and open in a way he suspected she never allowed. And he realized with sudden clarity that she wasn't asking about his professional training. She was asking if he saw her as a case, a problem to solve, a crisis to manage, or if he saw her as a person. "No," he said quietly. "It's not just a habit." The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them had names for yet. Not attraction exactly, though maybe that was there too. More like recognition. Two people who'd learned to armor themselves seeing each other without the armor, standing in the wreckage of their carefully constructed facades. Allison broke the moment first, looking away, wiping her face again. "I need to go home, but I can't." She stopped. Swallowed. "I don't want to go home yet. Does that make sense?" Daniel understood completely. Home was where you were supposed to feel safe, but sometimes home was just where you were most alone. "Yeah," he said. "It makes sense. Where's your driver?" "I sent him away earlier. Told him I had a late meeting." She laughed, hollow. "I lied to my driver so I could have a panic attack in private. That's where I'm at." "I can give you a ride," Daniel offered. "Take you wherever you want to go. Or nowhere. Just drive for a while if that helps." "You don't have to." "I know." Allison looked at him for a long moment, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride versus desperation, control versus need. The ingrained belief that accepting help was weakness versus the bone-deep exhaustion of carrying everything alone. Finally, she nodded once. Sharp and decisive, the executive decision-making kicking in even in crisis. "Okay, thank you." They walked through the service corridors in silence, avoiding the main hallways where executives lingered with cocktails and carefully calibrated networking. Daniel led her to the employee parking garage, to the far corner where the night shift crew parked their aging vehicles. He stopped in front of a silver Honda Accord with paint faded by Indianapolis winters and a dent in the rear bumper from the time he'd backed into a pole at Target because Emily was crying and he was trying to reach her pacifier and not paying attention. "This is me," he said, unlocking the passenger door. Felt suddenly self-conscious about the state of it. "It's not. It's fine." Allison slid into the seat without hesitation, without the judgment he'd braced for. The interior smelled like vanilla air freshener, the cheap kind from gas stations that Emily picked out because she liked the picture on the package, and crayons and the lingering scent of the apple juice box that had rolled under the seat last week. A booster seat sat in back, pink and covered in dinosaur stickers that Emily had applied herself. Picture books scattered across the floor. A stuffed rabbit missing one ear tucked into the seatbelt. This was the real architecture of his life. No pretense, no performance, just the daily mechanics of being a single father who was doing his best and usually falling just short of adequate. Allison looked at it all, really looked, taking in the evidence of Emily's existence. And something in her expression softened. Daniel got in, started the engine. The radio came on automatically, tuned to the country station Emily liked, something twangy about trucks and summer love. He reached to turn it off. "Don't," Allison said quietly. "It's nice. Leave it." He left it. Pulled out of the garage onto wet Indianapolis streets. Rain had come and gone during the party, leaving everything slick and reflective under the streetlights. Traffic was light, late Friday night, past the dinner rush before the bar crowds got too rowdy. "Where do you want to go?" Daniel asked. Allison stared out the window at the passing city. "I don't know, She trailed off. "I don't want to go home yet." "Okay, then we won't. Just drive?" "Yeah, just drive." So Daniel drove. North through downtown, past the monuments and museums, toward the neighborhoods where the city started breathing easier. The Soldiers and Sailors Monument lit up against the night sky, standing sentinel over a city that had been home his whole life but felt different now, smaller somehow, like he'd outgrown it or it had outgrown him. He knew these streets the way you know the geography of your own body. Knew them from childhood, from his years at University Hospital working crisis intervention, from the late-night drives after Sarah died when Emily was finally asleep, and the apartment felt too small and too empty, and moving was the only thing that made the grief bearable. The radio played quiet. Neither of them spoke. And Daniel felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not quite peace, but its neighbor. The absence of pressure. No one asking him to be anything except present. After 10 minutes of comfortable silence, Allison said, "You're not going to ask me what happened?" "No, Mom." "Why not?" Daniel kept his eyes on the road, hands loose on the wheel. "Because it's not my business. And because sometimes people just need to not be alone for a while. They don't need questions or solutions. Just company." From the corner of his eye, he saw her shoulders drop another half-inch. She leaned her head against the window, watching Indianapolis slide past. Familiar and strange at the same time, the city she'd conquered without ever really seeing. "You have a daughter," she said after a moment. Statement, not question, but he heard the curiosity underneath. "Yeah, Emily. She's 7. "The car seat." "Yeah." He smiled without meaning to, the reflexive response that came whenever he thought about his daughter. "She's the best thing I ever did. Maybe the only thing I did right." "I doubt that." "You'd be surprised." Daniel turned onto broad Ripple Avenue, past darkened restaurants and late-night bars. I spent 10 years counseling people through their worst moments, and I couldn't help Sarah. Couldn't save my marriage before it, couldn't save my career after it. But Emily— He stopped, the words catching. She's proof I'm capable of something good, something that lasts. Allison turned to look at him. What was she like? Sarah? No one asked about Sarah anymore. Not directly. People tiptoed around her memory like it was landmine territory, offered condolences but never curiosity, treated his grief like something to be managed rather than honored. But Allison asked it straight, without flinching, and something in Daniel's chest loosened. Bright, he said quietly. She lit up rooms, had this laugh that made everyone around her start laughing too. She was an elementary school teacher, 2nd grade, and she loved it. Loved kids in that unself-conscious way some people have. She made up songs about multiplication tables and read voices for every character. His throat tightened. Emily has her eyes. Same blue. Sometimes I look at my daughter and I see Sarah looking back and it's— He stopped. Breathed. It's hard. And it's beautiful. Both things at once. Is that why you stopped counseling? Because everywhere you looked you saw her? Partly. Mostly it was the guilt. Daniel slowed at a red light, watched it wash the street in crimson. I spent 10 years teaching people that they weren't responsible for things outside their control. That they couldn't prevent every bad thing, couldn't save everyone, couldn't live their lives in service of some impossible standard of perfection. And then Sarah died, and I couldn't apply any of it to myself. Every tool I'd ever used on others just slid right off when I tried to use them on me. So you became a warehouse manager. So I became a warehouse manager. The light turned green. Daniel accelerated gently, muscle memory guiding the car. It seemed like the right choice. Simple work, decent pay, hours that let me be there for Emily. No emotional entanglement, no one's mental health depending on me, just boxes and trucks and going home at the end of the day. Does it work? The simplicity? Daniel thought about it. Some days. Other days I feel like I'm hiding. Like I'm this person who used to do important work and now I'm running away from it because I'm scared. Scared of what? Failing again. Seeing someone in crisis and freezing up. Or worse, seeing them and knowing exactly what to do and choosing not to do it because I can't afford to care that much anymore. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. That's what scares me most. Not that I can't help, that I've taught myself not to want to. Allison was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she said, "But you helped me." "Yeah. Even though you're scared." "Yeah. That's brave." Daniel shook his head. "It's not brave. Brave is a choice. This was reflex. I heard you and my body just moved before my brain could stop it. I think that's exactly what brave is." Allison said softly. Doing the thing even when everything in you says run. They drove in silence after that, winding through neighborhoods Daniel knew by heart. Past the house where he'd grown up, though he didn't point it out. Past the elementary school where Sarah had taught. Empty now, dark except for security lights. Past the intersection where the accident had happened. He always took a different route when Emily was in the car. Couldn't bear the thought of her asking questions he didn't have good answers for. But alone, he drove past it almost deliberately, like touching a bruise to make sure it still hurt. "I don't have anyone," Allison said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "No family, no friends, not real ones, just people who work for me or want something from me or see me as a symbol instead of a person." She pressed her forehead against the window glass. "I gave that speech tonight to 300 people. got a standing ovation, and I felt completely alone, like I was behind glass watching them applaud someone who doesn't exist. Daniel slowed, pulled into an empty parking lot next to a darkened pharmacy, put the car in park, turned off the engine. This was the moment, the one where he could either offer platitudes, "You're not alone, you have so many people who admire you, success is its own kind of connection," or he could give her truth. He chose truth. That must be really hard. 5 words. Simple. But something about them made Allison's breath catch, made her turn to look at him with eyes bright with unshed tears. "Everyone tells me I'm strong," she said, voice breaking. "That I'm successful, that I have everything, but no one ever says it's hard. No one ever just—" She stopped, swallowed. "No one ever just sees that it's hard." Daniel reached into the glove box, pulled out another pack of tissues. He kept backups, learned that lesson from Emily's first cold, and handed them to her. She took them, pressed them against her eyes, and cried for real this time. Not the panicked tears from the hallway, but deeper ones, pulled from a well that maybe hadn't been touched in years. He sat quiet, gave her space, listened to the rain that had started again, gentle percussion on the roof, while she let herself break in the passenger seat of his beat-up Honda in an empty parking lot at 11:30 on a Friday night. This was familiar territory, sitting with someone's pain, holding space for their unraveling, not trying to fix or soothe or redirect, just existing beside them in the dark while they found their footing again. He'd done this hundreds of times, thousands maybe, but it felt different now. Maybe because he wasn't doing it as a job. Maybe because her pain looked too much like his own. After a while, Allison's breathing steadied. She wiped her face, looked at the crumpled tissue in her hand, laughed shakily. "This is the least professional thing I've ever done." "Good thing we're not at work, then." "Where are we?" Daniel looked around, recognized the pharmacy, the street corner, the bus stop shelter. About 3 miles from downtown, parking lot of a closed Walgreens, very glamorous. That got a real laugh from her. Small but genuine. "Very. You hungry?" Daniel asked. "There's a diner not far from here. 24 hours. Terrible coffee, great pie." Allison wiped the last of her tears, looked at him. "At midnight? Best time for pie. I probably look like a disaster." "You look human. But if it helps, I'm still in my warehouse manager disguise, so we'll match." She smiled. Actually smiled. "Okay, let's get terrible coffee and pie at midnight like normal people." "We are normal people," Daniel said, starting the engine. "Just took us a while to remember." Stella's place sat on the corner of Virginia Avenue and Fletcher, a squat chrome building with red vinyl booths and a neon sign that had been buzzing since before Daniel was born. He'd been coming here since Emily was a baby, back when 3 a.m. feedings meant he was awake anyway, and might as well have pancakes while the world slept. They slid into a corner booth, the vinyl sticky and cracked in ways that felt honest. A waitress in her 60s appeared immediately, coffee pot already in hand, name tag reading Donna in faded letters. "Danny," she said, pouring without asking, like she'd been doing for 3 years. "Haven't seen you in a couple weeks. How's that baby girl?" "Not a baby anymore," Daniel said, wrapping his hands around the mug. 7 now, taking ballet. Wants to be a paleontologist who dances. It's very specific. Lord, they grow fast. Feels like yesterday you were bringing her in here at 4 a.m., all colicky and screaming." Donna turned to Allison, took in the expensive suit and tear-stained makeup without comment, without judgment. Just poured coffee and said, "Honey, you look like you've had a night. Coffee help?" "God, I hope so," Allison said. Donna smiled, set down 2 menus, disappeared toward the kitchen without another word. The diner was mostly empty, a trucker at the counter working through eggs and bacon, a couple of college kids in a booth by the window, textbooks spread between them, the desperate energy of people cramming for finals. Allison wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, inhaled the steam. I usually drink $8 lattes from that place on Monument Circle. Sustainably sourced, fair trade, oat milk foam. How's this compare? She took a sip. Grimaced. Terrible. Like battery acid and regret. But honest. No pretense. Just bad coffee being exactly what it is. Daniel smiled, opened the menu he'd memorized years ago. The pie's better. Lemon meringue's good. Cherry, chocolate cream if you're feeling decadent. What are you having? Pancakes. I always get pancakes. At midnight, especially at midnight, breakfast food is time agnostic. That's not a word. Should be. When Donna came back, Allison ordered scrambled eggs and wheat toast. Safe? Practical. The kind of order someone makes when they're not sure if their stomach will cooperate. Daniel got his usual stack, and they sat in the warm diner light while the jukebox in the corner played something old and country, all steel guitar and heartache that felt appropriate for the moment. Tell me about Emily, Allison said. So Daniel did. He told her about the dinosaur phase that started at 4 and showed no signs of stopping. About the wall in Emily's room covered in pictures she'd drawn of various prehistoric creatures, each labeled in careful letters with names most adults couldn't pronounce. About how she insisted on wearing her tutu to the grocery store because ballerinas need to practice everywhere, Daddy. He told her about the time Emily had gotten sent to the principal's office for correcting her teacher's pronunciation of Pachycephalosaurus during a lesson on dinosaurs. About how she'd come home indignant, not because she'd been in trouble, but because grown-ups should know things before they teach them. She sounds extraordinary, Allison said, smiling for real now. She is. Sometimes I look at her and I can't believe I get to be her dad. Like the universe made a clerical error and gave me this perfect kid when I'm clearly not equipped for it. I think the fact that you worry about being equipped proves you are. Sarah used to say that the parents who worried were usually the ones doing okay, and the ones who were certain they had it figured out were the ones to watch. Daniel's throat tightened. I miss her. Every day I miss her, but especially in the parenting moments. When Emily asks questions I don't have answers for, or when she's sad and I can't fix it, or when she does something amazing and I can't turn to Sarah and say, "Look what we made." Allison reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. The touch was brief, careful, but it steadied something in him. She'd be proud, Allison said quietly, of both of you. I hope so. The food arrived. They ate slowly, the conversation drifting between easier topics. Favorite movies. Daniel said The Princess Bride. Allison admitted to a secret love of Legally Blonde. Worst jobs. Allison told him about working night shifts at a gas station while going to community college, Daniel countered, with his summer as a telemarketer, a job that had lasted exactly 1 week before he'd quit in moral defeat. But between the easy topics, deeper ones emerged. Allison told him about foster care, about being moved 6 times before she turned 12, about learning to keep her belongings in a backpack because you never knew when you'd have to leave in a hurry, about the feeling of never quite belonging anywhere, of being a guest in other people's lives. I worked 3 jobs putting myself through community college, she said, pushing eggs around her plate. Cleaned offices at night, worked the gas station on weekends, waited tables during weekday lunches, slept 4 hours if I was lucky. But I was so determined to prove I could do it that I didn't need anyone. Did it work? I got through school, got into State University on scholarship. Then Harvard Business School on a combination of loans and grants that I just finished paying off 2 years ago. She looked up, met his eyes. But the not needing anyone part? That just got worse. I built this whole life around being self-sufficient, and now I'm at the top and I've never felt more alone. Success doesn't fix loneliness, Daniel said quietly. Just gives you a better view of it. Is that from your counseling days? That's from my 3 a.m. existential crisis days, which coincidentally overlapped heavily with my counseling days. Allison smiled. You're good at this, making it feel like conversation instead of therapy. That's because it's not therapy. I'm not your therapist, I'm just… He paused, looking for the right word. I'm just someone who gets it. The loneliness. The feeling of being stuck in a life that looks right from outside but feels hollow from inside. Do you still feel that way? Daniel thought about it. Most days. But then Emily hugs me and says, I love you, Daddy. Or I watch her do a perfect pirouette. Or she explains the difference between Brachiosaurus and Brontosaurus with complete confidence. And I remember, I'm choosing this. The hollowness in some parts is the price I pay for fullness in others. And that's okay. Is it? Okay? It has to be. Because the alternative is trying to be everything to everyone, and ending up being nothing to myself. He took a sip of terrible coffee. I tried that, didn't go well. They stayed at Stella's until almost 3 in the morning, talking, listening, sharing the kind of truths that only surface when it's late enough that your defenses are too tired to maintain themselves. Donna refilled their coffee 6 times, gave Daniel a look that clearly said, Who is this woman, and is she good enough for you? But said nothing out loud. Finally, Allison checked her phone. The screen lit up with notifications. 23 missed calls, 46 texts, all from her assistant and various board members wondering where the CEO had disappeared to after her triumphant speech. I should go, she said, but made no move to stand. Yeah. Another 5 minutes passed. The college kids packed up their books, left with exhausted waves. The trucker paid his bill, headed back to his rig. The diner fell even quieter, just Daniel and Allison and Donna wiping down the counter with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for 40 years. Daniel? Allison's voice was small now, uncertain. Yeah? Thank you. For tonight. For seeing me. The real me. Not the CEO or the success story or whatever image people have. Just me. You're welcome. Can I… She hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her face like lightning. Can I see you again? Not as your boss? Not at work? Just like this, as people who understand each other. Daniel knew he should say no. Knew this was complicated in ways that could cost him his job, his stability, everything Emily needed. Knew that getting involved with the CEO of his company violated about 17 different HR policies and common-sense guidelines. But he looked at Allison, this powerful woman who'd built an empire but couldn't build a home, who'd conquered a company but lost herself in the process, and saw something he recognized from his own mirror. Someone who'd forgotten how to be anything except strong. Someone who needed permission to be weak. And he realized that maybe he needed that permission too. Yeah, he said. I'd like that. Her smile was tentative but real. Good. Because I meant what I said earlier. What's that? Tonight, I'm yours. She stood, gathered her coat, her composure gradually reassembling like armor clicking back into place. Not in a romantic way, just… Tonight I belonged to myself. Because you gave me permission to be human instead of perfect. You didn't need my permission. Maybe not. But I needed the reminder. She pulled out her phone. I'll text you. We can figure out when. Okay. At the door she paused, looked back. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Allison. He watched her walk to the curb, watched her call a car service, watched her climb into the back of a black sedan that probably cost more than his Honda was worth. She didn't look back. The car pulled away, taillights disappearing into Indianapolis darkness. Daniel sat in the booth for another 10 minutes, drinking terrible coffee, thinking about the night, about the choices he'd made, about the ones still ahead, thinking about Sarah and whether this felt like betrayal or like healing or maybe both things at once. Finally, Donna came over with the check, looked at him with the expression of someone who'd seen a lot of late-night confessions and human drama play out in vinyl booths. "That one's got some weight to her," she said. "Yeah, you got enough weight of your own, Danny. Don't need to take on hers, too." "I know. But you're going to anyway." It wasn't a question. Daniel pulled out his wallet, left cash, plus a generous tip. "Probably." Donna patted his shoulder. "Just be careful. Some people, they got holes in them so deep you could pour yourself in forever and never fill them up. And you got a little girl who needs you intact." "I know," Daniel said again. "Thanks, Donna." He drove home through empty streets, the city asleep, the radio playing soft. Pulled into his parking spot behind the apartment building, sat in the car for a long moment before going upstairs, thinking about what he'd started tonight, thinking about where it might lead. Inside, Maria was asleep on his couch, game show reruns playing at low volume. He paid her, added an extra 20 for the late hour, helped her gather her things. "Emily was an angel," Maria said, yawning. "Fell asleep during the movie, didn't even fuss." "Thanks for staying so late." "Anytime, Danny. You look tired. Get some sleep." After she left, Daniel stood in Emily's doorway, watching his daughter sleep. She had her stuffed T-Rex clutched to her chest, lips slightly parted, completely peaceful in the way only children could be. No anxiety about tomorrow, no regret about yesterday, just the pure present tense of being 7 and safe and loved. He thought about what Donna said, about pouring himself into holes that couldn't be filled, about having enough weight of his own, about Emily needing him intact. All true, all valid concerns. But there was something else, too. Something about tonight that had felt like the first real breath he'd taken in 3 years. Like he'd been existing in grayscale and suddenly remembered color existed. And maybe that was dangerous. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it would blow up and cost him everything. But maybe, just maybe, it was also what staying alive looked like after you'd survived the thing that should have killed you. Daniel pulled out his phone, looked at the screen, and wasn't surprised to see a text already waiting. "Unknown number. Thank you for tonight. I needed that more than you know. AC." He saved the contact, stared at it for a long moment, then typed, "Anytime." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Coffee this week? My treat. I promise better than Stella's." Daniel smiled despite himself. "Stella's coffee is terrible. Hard to do worse." Is that a yes? He thought about all the reasons to say no. Thought about Emily, about stability, about the comfortable numbness he'd built over 3 years and whether he was ready to risk it. Then he thought about Allison's face in the diner, finally relaxed, finally real. Thought about how it felt to be seen, to be known. "Thursday after my shift? I get off at 2. Perfect. I'll send you the address." Daniel set down his phone, looked at his daughter one more time, and let himself imagine what it might feel like to want something again. Not just for Emily, but for himself. To choose presence over hiding. To risk caring when caring had already destroyed him once. Maybe Donna was right. Maybe he was pouring himself into holes that couldn't be filled. Or maybe he was just learning that you couldn't live on empty forever. That eventually you had to risk being full again, even knowing it made you vulnerable, even knowing it might hurt. He climbed into bed, set his alarm for 6:30, Emily's wake-up time, and closed his eyes. For the first time in 3 years, he fell asleep without the familiar weight of dread, without the nightmares that usually came, without the sense that he was just going through motions, waiting for permission to feel alive again. Outside, Indianapolis breathed its quiet rhythms. Inside, Daniel Matthews, former crisis counselor, current warehouse manager, always Emily's father, and maybe now something else too, finally rested. The emergency was over. What came next was uncertain. But for the first time since Sarah died, uncertain didn't feel like drowning. It felt like possibility.